3 spine-chilling real stories of terrifying paranormal encounters you'll wish were hidden forever in the quiet suburb of Maplewood, where every house looked like a mirrored reflection of the last. Darkness crept in like a thief. Rachel, a devoted nurse and single mother in her early 30s, faced her own horror. 2 months had gone by since her son Danny vanished, without a trace. Each tick of the clock echoed in her empty home, a spectral reminder of laughter and joy now turned to silence. The toys remained untouched, dust settling over them like a forgotten dream. Whispers of strange occurrences swirled through town, a child's laugh faintly heard in the wind, shadows last seen flitting past windows. One night, as Rachel sat on the frayed couch, scrolling through her phone, it buzzed ominously. A message from an unknown number appeared. "He was with me. I know where he is." Panic coursed through her veins. Clutching her phone like a lifeline, she felt hope and dread twist together, creating a knot in her stomach. Every flickering light in her house seemed tainted with foreboding. The walls breathed eerily with the whispers that seeped in through the cracks. Rachel's fear escalated as she noticed things moving at the edges of her vision, shadows darting when she turned her head. Desperately searching for control, she turned her attention to Mr. Jenkins, the reclusive man next door who once shared a bond with Danny during his teaching days. Now, grief and secrecy seemed to cocoon him. At night, she'd see him in his yard, clutching at something unseen, his lips mouthing words with no sound. His gaze often lingered on her house, dark and intense, stirring a fear that gnawed at her insides. Then, one fateful evening, while staring at the ominous shadows gathering in her living room, dread overcame her. A low rustle teased her ears, and when she leapt to confront it, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm, only silence greeted her. Was she losing her mind? Was the loss of Danny warping reality itself? The following day, she stumbled upon faded records hidden in the town archives, stories of children going missing, intertwined with sinister whispers about old rituals connected to Mr. Jenkins. As dread pooled in her gut, she confronted him. That moment, she wished she could take back. His chilling grin revealed more than fear, it was a glimpse into a dark echo of knowledge. Just as her heart sank, a new message pinged on her phone. The screen illuminated a photograph, Danny, looking small and frightened, peering behind a door. It was real, tangible terror that pulled the breath from her lungs. The walls buzzed with the pulse of her heartbeat. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As each heartbeat thudded louder in her ears, Rachel felt hot breath on her neck, the unsettling realization that something dark was watching her. The lines blurred between fear and resolve. Was Mr. Jenkins a gatekeeper to a malevolent truth? She pushed aside thoughts of her own unraveling sanity and steeled herself. To confront the unknown swirling around her, she needed to plunge into this darkness. But the question loomed large: could she fight whatever was growing in those shadows, or would it consume her first? The urgency simmered, each dread-laden moment morphed into an inevitable spiral, drawing ever closer to the unthinkable mystery. Rachel's breath hitched as she stared at the flickering screen. The image of Danny haunted her, the look in his wide eyes like a mirror reflecting her own fear. She needed to act, but fear shackled her limbs. Would opening that door lead her to him or push her deeper into madness? The night wrapped Maplewood in a shroud of unease. Shadows twisted and stretched across her white walls, causing her heart to race like a wild drum. The weight of the unknown pressed against her chest. Gathering what was left of her resolve, Rachel pushed herself off the couch. She had to find out more about Mr. Jenkins and the dark secrets that seemed to seep from him. Her steps felt heavy as she moved towards the door, each creak echoing unnervingly in the silence, as if the house itself whispered warnings. The street outside was cloaked in darkness, illuminated only by the fleeting glow of streetlights, casting ghostly figures on the pavement. A chill ran down her spine. She remembered the performances at school, how the children would squeal in joy and Danny's laughter ringing sweet like a bell. But that joy was now stifled by sinister echoes. Rachel found herself standing near Mr. Jenkins' yard, hesitating at the edge of the shadows. Was she ready to face whatever lay beyond? Clenching her fists, she stepped forward. The faint sound of chanting made her skin crawl, a murmuring that trickled from the cracks in his fence. It was mechanical, rhythmic, and utterly foreign. She moved closer, her heart racing. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of Mr. Jenkins through a window. His back was turned as he stood before a makeshift altar cluttered with candles, their flames flickering erratically. Surrounded by a haze of dust, the air was tinged with something acrid and wrong. Drawn in by an unseen force, she inched several steps closer. Then, without warning, he turned. His gaze swept over the yard, sharp like a predator. For a moment, she was frozen, her instincts screaming at her to run. But she needed knowledge, and maybe, just maybe, the answer to Danny's whereabouts hung in the air like a thin veil waiting to be lifted. Before she had a chance to step back, Mr. Jenkins locked eyes with her. An unhinged smile crept across his lips. "Why, Rachel," he said, his voice rasping like dry leaves. "I've been expecting you." The tension thickened. Then, a series of loud thuds echoed from within his house like furniture being overturned. Panic coursed through Rachel, pulling her back a step. What was happening inside? Did Danny cry out, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't fathom? Turning, she sprinted back to her house, fear clawing at her throat. The shadows followed, whispering secrets of things lost and cursed. As she fumbled with her key, she could feel the weight of dread pressing down on her. The walls seemed to breathe, a heartbeat resonating from within. Once inside, she leaned against the closed door, her heart pounding in her ears. And that's when her phone buzzed again. Another message. Apprehension washed over her, but curiosity won. "It's time. Come find me." The air felt electric, thick with tension. With every ounce of her being screaming against it, she knew she had to follow. A gut feeling told her she couldn't ignore this pull, even if it meant facing the very thing she feared the most. As she hesitated, staring into the encroaching darkness that waited just beyond her door, she whispered a silent prayer to the universe. What would she uncover when she stepped back into that night? For Danny, for the truth. With a deep breath, she stepped outside into the looming shadows. Each step felt like walking deeper into the abyss. But what awaited her beyond the threshold was something that would forever alter her fate, and possibly her soul. Rachel's heart thundered as she stepped into the night, the air heavy with dread. Each breath felt like an anchor pulling her deeper. The glow of streetlights was weak and flickering, as if urging her back, warning her against this plunge into the unknown. The street felt like a wasteland, devoid of life, shadows creeping like tendrils ready to wrap around her. She moved tentatively, every sound amplified: the rustle of leaves, the soft patter of her footsteps, even her own breathing sounded alarmingly loud. Time blurred as she neared Mr. Jenkins' home, the ground beneath her staying stubbornly cold and uninviting. As she reached the boundary of the yard, a sudden rustle made her freeze. A small figure slipped into the streetlight's glow. A cat, tail high, darted past her, sending her heart racing anew. It was silly, but she felt a momentary kinship with the creature, both of them drawn into the dark for reasons beyond understanding. With the retracting adrenaline and sharpened senses, Rachel refocused on the house. Was she only a few moments away from discovering the truth about Danny? Or was this just another trap set by Mr. Jenkins, a web woven tighter with every step she took? The chanting grew louder now, clearer. Was it a language? A hymn? What invoked such a dark symphony of voices? They rolled over her like smoke, wrapping around her mind, and she felt a strange pull toward the front door. Deciding she couldn't linger in the shadows any longer, Rachel crept toward the entrance, feeling the pulse of the house under her fingertips as she brushed the wall. It felt warm, alive. She hesitated, recalling the last time she'd seen Danny. His smile, innocent and bright, filled her eyes, driving her forward. with a shaky hand, she knocked softly, praying he could somehow feel her presence. Nothing. Heart sinking, she dared to try the knob. The door was unlocked, swinging open with a creak that echoed through the stillness, inviting her in. The air inside was thick, heavy with incense, a sickly sweet scent that clawed at her throat and burned her eyes. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes under the flickering candlelight as she stepped inside, feeling the weight of the house settle around her. Danny. The name slipped out before she could stop it, breaking the silence like a shattered mirror. She felt the walls tremble, almost as if they were listening. The room was bare except for the altar she'd glimpsed earlier, decorated with odd symbols and candles that flickered like dying stars. And there, at the center, lay what looked like a child's drawing torn apart and disfigured, the once innocent image now marred by dark scratches, the very essence of loss and fear. Suddenly, a deep, guttural laughter echoed from the back room. It was a sound that made her blood freeze. It wasn't Mr. Jenkins, it was too chaotic. It sounded like it came from the very walls, an entity awakened by her presence. Panic surged through her. "Get out!" screamed a voice from behind, and Rachel spun around to see a shadow emerging from the darkness, its form shifting and bending, never quite revealing itself. In that instant, the reality of her situation crashed over her like a tidal wave. She wasn't the hunter, she was the hunted. And whatever awaited her in the dark could sense her fear, feeding on it, growing stronger with every heartbeat. But just as she turned to flee, she was met with a blinding flash of light from the back room. A silhouette loomed, and Rachel heard him, the laugh, that unmistakable laugh, Danny's unmistakable laugh. Rachel, as the world tilted beneath her and shadows reached for her once more, she braced herself, questioning if the truth was something she could handle. Just as she thought she could make sense of it all, a deafening crash echoed from the back. Was it him? Or was it something far worse? Every instinct screamed for her to escape, but she found herself rooted to the spot, staring into the relentless night. Would she uncover the darkness or be consumed by it? "Stay," it whispered, and within that command, something crossed the threshold. Of hope and horror. What awaited her next? Rachel's body felt paralyzed, caught between the darkness of the corner behind her and the beckoning shadows of the back room. The faint flickering from the altar cast eerie images on the walls, each one more grotesque than the last, reminding her of nightmares she had never wanted to remember. "Danny?" she called out again, her voice wavering, swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. Panic clawed at her throat, and she forced herself to step backward, inching away from the creeping dread. The weight of the house pressed down on her, each second stretching like eternity. The laughter stopped. A sudden, suffocating stillness enveloped the room, and Rachel strained to hear anything, any sign of him. She almost thought maybe it had all been a cruel trick of the mind until she heard it again, that unmistakable whisper, seductive and malevolent. "Stay!" It slithered in the air, wrapping around her like a cold chain. Rachel could feel the sweat pooling at her spine, the oppressive heat of fear finally breaking through her defenses. She refused to be a puppet. Not now. With a surge of defiance, she turned, bolting toward the front door. But the moment she moved, darkness surged from the back room, creeping and curling around her feet like tendrils of smoke. They wrapped tight, dragging her back, their cold grasp threatening to suffocate her. She kicked and fought, her breath coming in desperate gasps. She wouldn't surrender. The laughter erupted again, deranged, wild. It echoed in her ears, clawing at her sanity. "You're not leaving," the voice taunted, a chilling promise that reverberated through her bones. Her heart raced, pounding a frantic rhythm as she lunged for the door, her hand grasping the handle. The shadows converged, tightening around her, but she pulled with everything she had. The door refused to budge. It was like the house itself had decided to swallow her whole. "Danny!" she cried, desperation spilling from her lips. "Where are you?" A faint sob broke through the darkness, a sound caught between sorrow and hope. It resonated, echoing from the back room that she had instinctively shied away from. The laugh transformed into a low, monstrous growl, fissures of anger bubbling beneath. Rachel, his voice was still there, but it sounded different, blurred, almost as if the air itself twisted it. "Help me." The words burst forth, a last attempt at reaching him. She felt something shift in the energy around her, the shadows momentarily faltering. With renewed strength, she yanked the door once more, this time feeling as if the very fibers of reality were pulling against her. The hinges let out a tortured creak, and finally, inch by inch, the door began to swing open. Fresh air met her face, intoxicating in its promise of freedom, but just as she made her escape, a figure lunged from the back room, shimmering in the dim light. It was Danny, or at least the memory of him, eyes wide and pleading, face twisted in fear. "Don't leave," he cried, extending a hand toward her. She hesitated, caught between the familiar warmth of his gaze and the gnashing shadows that fought to reclaim her. "Choose." The voice growled, loud and resonating. "What will it be?" Time froze, the horror of choice crashing over her. Had he been the one calling her in? Did she dare risk everything for a child she might never save? Before she could make sense of it, the darkness lunged for her, the shrieks echoing through the past as the shadows tightened. Her instincts screamed for survival, but the pull of Danny's cry resonated, deeper than the fear. Suddenly, the room shook, and a blinding light erupted from the depths, illuminating the horrors hidden in the corners. Rachel. In that split second, she had to decide. Would she plunge back into the abyss or step out into the unknown, where the light flickered with uncertainty, the shadows roared, ready to swallow her whole, and she felt her heart about to rupture with terror. But as the light beckoned, she took a breath, realizing that uncovering the truth might be the only path forward. Would she grasp at hope, or would it slip through her fingers? What awaits in the light? Rachel's heart pounded as her feet hovered on the threshold, torn between the warmth of the light and the suffocating embrace of darkness. The distorted images of the altar twisted behind her, grotesque figures writhing in anticipation. "Rachel." Danny's voice came again, this time more urgent. The light flickered, casting long, haunting shadows that danced on the walls. With a deep breath, she committed to the illumination, stepping forward. As she crossed into the light, a sudden chill swept over her, freezing her in place. The air thickened, and the brightness began to fade, transforming into a gray suspension of nothingness. Panic seized her chest, but she forced herself to breathe. "Danny!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the void. She felt weightless, suspended between worlds. "Where are you?" The silence stretched painfully, clawing at her sanity. It felt as if the light itself held its breath, waiting for something dreadful to unfold. Then came the sound, a low, slithering pulse that sent wires of ice through her veins. The ground beneath her feet vanished, replaced by an unfathomable depth. She stared into the shadows emerging from the edges, whispering secrets only they knew. "You're here," a voice hissed, familiar yet unrecognizable. "You chose." A flash of Danny's face appeared, twisted in anguish. His eyes were pleading, as if he had been waiting forever. "Rachel, I'm sorry it wasn't me." Before she could process, the shadows surged up, forming monstrous silhouettes, stretching and ready to consume her. "You'll never escape," they hissed, fury and despair wove into their chilling tone. Rachel fought against the dark tendrils, her hands clawing through nothingness. The echoes of laughter reverberated in the ether, cruel and mocking. "No!" she screamed, her voice ripping through the silence. She recalled the warmth of Danny's embrace, the innocent laughter they shared. She refused to let the darkness take her. Each memory fueled her resistance, stoked indignation in her heart, gathering her resolve. She shouted, "You don't own me." The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned, and the light flared around her again, illuminating the darkness like a shield, but it was not out of reach. "You are a part of this now," the voice twisted. "Your pain will feed us. Your choices bind you." As if responding to their threat, the light surged once more, breaking the suffocating grip, and images flashed in her mind, a glimpse of a door, a way out, a potential escape. She pushed through the shadows, every ounce of her strength focused on that fleeting vision. With a desperate cry, she reached for the door, her fingers stretching out. The darkness shrieked, a cacophony that clawed at her mind, but she wouldn't relent. As her hand touched the door, it erupted in a blinding burst of energy. The world collapsed around her, turning to shards of darkness and light merging violently. Then came silence eerily still, suffocating. Rachel opened her eyes, gasping for air, and found herself sprawled on a cold, hard floor. The familiar scent of decay hung in the air. She was back in the house. Panic surged anew as she shot to her feet, searching for signs of Danny. Danny! The echoes of her voice fell flat. Rachel, a whisper came from the shadows. A figure loomed in the corner, a fragile silhouette that could have easily been Danny. Is that you? She stepped closer, heart racing with dread and hope. But as the figure stepped into the flickering light, Rachel's stomach dropped, and her breath caught. It wasn't he, her son. His eyes glimmered with something dark, sinister, and ancient. Welcome back, it said, grinning widely. Everything inside her screamed run, yet she was trapped. In a house that didn't just want her to stay but craved her very essence. It knew her now. As the shadows began to slither once more, wrapping around her wrists, she felt the chill of fear arise. And above it all loomed a terrible question: what will it take to escape this nightmare? The figure stepped closer, its mouth stretching into a mocking grin that sent a shiver racing down Rachel's spine. Did you really think you could escape? It whispered, the words curling around her like smoke, claustrophobic and thick. The shadows pulsed at its feet, eager to claim her. Danny! She shouted again, voice trembling. Desperation clawed at her throat. This thing, whatever it was not her son. It, though, bore his likeness, twisted into something unrecognizable. She backed away, heart pounding, eyes darting around the room for an escape. Do you think you can just run? It taunted, the shadows tightening their grip. Your love brought you here, and your fear will keep you. With a surge of adrenaline, Rachel lunged to the side, breaking free of the encroaching darkness. She darted toward the hallway, breathless and frantic. The house groaned in protest, the walls bending and shifting as if they were alive, angry at her defiance. A low growl resonated like thunder, shaking the air around her. Rachel, come back. The tortured mimicry of Danny's voice pulled at her, drawing her to the greater darkness of the house. She halted, catching a glimpse of blackened eyes reflecting a glimmer of familiarity. Please, don't leave me. But those pleas held no warmth. The shadows thickened, and with every heartbeat, the darkness pressed closer, each second a reminder of what she might lose. She felt her resolve waver but forced herself to push forward, refusing to succumb to their manipulative grasp. The hallway loomed ahead, dimly illuminated by patches of flickering light, but she couldn't allow despair to take root. There's a way out. She shouted back, willing herself to believe it. You're not real. You can't have me. She repeated the mantra like a shield, each step fueled by the fierce desire to escape the nightmare. Her feet pounded against the wooden floor, echoing through the corridor like a war drum. She could hear the whispers now, they were all around her. They slithered into her ears, congealed her blood, and wrapped around her thoughts. The walls seemed to pulse in time with her anxiety, feeding on her fear. She spotted a door at the end of the hall, its surface worn and weathered. Was that the entry from her dreams? The way to freedom? Panic surged again as she rushed toward it, the shadows clawing at her heels. With one sweep, she grasped the handle. It was cold and slick, a grip of despair. She twisted it, praying for escape. The door creaked open, revealing a blinding light beyond. But just before she could cross the threshold, the shadows lunged. They wrapped painfully around her ankles, tugging her back, trying to pull her down into the darkness. Rachel. The voice echoed around her again, frantic and filled with anguish. Subconsciously, she glanced back, trapped in an emotional whirlpool. Just for a second, she thought she saw a flicker of true concern in the figure. Could it be Danny? Or was it just another cruel trick, clenching her teeth, she pulled against the shadows, refusing to let them drag her under. No. I will not be yours. The light flared again, white-hot, blinding and vibrant. It surged forward, and the darkness hissed, recoiling from the brightness. With desperate strength, she twisted the handle, stepping over the threshold. The moment she crossed, the world compressed, shades of dark and light crashing into a new reality. She landed hard, breathless, on grass beneath an indigo sky. Rachel's heart raced as she peered around, desperate to make sense of her surroundings. How had she escaped? Where was Danny? The smell of fresh earth and distant trees lured her senses. Yet, something felt off, eerily beautiful, but wrong. Everything felt too quiet, too still in a way that was unsettling. And then she heard it, a soft whisper, chilling and faint, caressing her ear like a forbidden secret. You can never escape. Rachel's heart raced again as she turned slowly in place, scanning for the source, electric panic dancing in her veins. Shadows crept at the edges, and the whisper grew louder, more insistent. The fear that had begun to fade now surged anew, a suffocating blanket engulfing her. What darkness awaited her now? Would she truly ever be free? Rachel took a shaky step back, dread pooling in her gut. And above it all reigned a haunting question: how long do you think you can hide? Rachel's breath hitched in her throat as the whisper wrapped around her like a serpent, its chill crawling beneath her skin. She spun, scanning the eerie surroundings. The trees stood silent, their twisted branches reaching like skeletal fingers against the twilight sky. An overwhelming sense of dread coiled tighter with every heartbeat. She took a shaky step forward, her feet sinking into the soft, damp earth. It felt like a graveyard. The air thickened, pressing against her chest with each inhale. She couldn't stand still, she had to move. Danny! She called again, desperation clawing at the edges of her voice. There was no answer, only the maddening whisper that echoed, "You can never escape." Rachel pressed on, her senses hyper-awake, every shadow flickering at the corner of her vision amplifying her fear. If this place was a dream, it was a nightmare. The grass swallowed her feet, and the coldness seeped through her shoes. Had the shadows followed her here? Suddenly, a rustle came from the bushes nearby. She lunged backwards, heart racing, the adrenaline spiking through her veins. Who's there? Silence answered her. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to move toward the sound. A low moan broke the stillness, and her heart thumped loudly against her ribs. Please help me. The voice stirred within her, but it wasn't Danny. It was pleading and eerily familiar, yet distant. Rachel's instincts screamed at her to run, but another part urged her to find the source. The whispers grew louder, an angry chorus drowning out her thoughts. Help him. Save him. You know you want to. What do you want from me? She shouted, but the only response was an ominous laugh, echoing from every darkened corner of the valley. They taunted her, unrelenting, making her doubt her motives. What if they spoke the truth? What if there was a way to save him? Taking a deep breath, Rachel charged toward the thicket, driven by a mixture of desperation and determination. She pushed aside the branches, cutting her arms on thorny vines. The moan persisted, low and raspy, weaving its way into her mind. Finally, she stumbled into a small clearing. The moonlight spilled down, illuminating a figure hunched on the ground. Danny? Rachel gasped, rushing forward. But as she drew near, her heart sank. It wasn't him. The shape was twisted, half-formed, an abomination of who Danny once was. Its eyes glimmered with a twisted reflection of love, yet all at once suffused with pain. Help me. The figure's voice was a broken promissory note, a promise that shattered in the air. A chill swept over her as she recoiled in horror. It's not real, she breathed, stepping back, now entrapped by the shadows closing in around her. The laughter returned, louder, mocking her futile effort. The ground trembled, the trees swayed as if the very world was alive, wanting to swallow her whole. Rachel turned, her mind racing. She had to escape again, had to find her way out of this waking nightmare. The whispers swirled around her, losing coherence but gaining menace. "There's no way back, you belong to us now." Suddenly, a flash of familiarity snagged her attention. A doorway formed amidst the trees, glowing faintly. A beacon through the suffocating darkness. But it felt like a mirage, too inviting, too easy. Panic surged, battling against her hope. "Rachel." A voice, clearer now, cut through the chaos. Danny's real voice. A fragment of warmth in the cold abyss. She dashed toward the door, drawn by the echo of love and safety. Just as she reached out, a shadow lunged at her from behind, a dark hand grasping at her heart. "You can never leave." It screamed, the sound reverberating through the very air, tearing at her soul. With a final desperate push, Rachel grasped the handle, turning it fiercely and flinging herself into the light beyond. But was it truly the escape she sought, or merely another dark twist in her path? As the brightness enveloped her, the world fractured again, mosaic of reality and illusion, leaving her to wonder. Would she find Danny waiting on the other side, or would she plunge into an even deeper nightmare? Rachel stumbled through the doorway, the light engulfing her in a whirlwind of warmth and confusion. For a brief moment, she felt the weight of despair lift, only to find herself crashing into a cold, hard ground. Gasping, she sat up, blinking to clear her blurred vision. She was back in the forest, but it felt different. The trees were thicker, more menacing, their bark a deep black that seemed to absorb the dim light filtering through the canopy. The ground churned beneath her, muck and roots entwining around her feet like tendrils trying to pull her back. "Danny!" She screamed, her voice cracking against the solid silence that enveloped her. The forest seemed to breathe, the air heavy and thick, wrapping tight around her throat. She could feel at the pulse of the woods, a dark heartbeat that synchronized with her own. From the thick underbrush came the low moan again. Rachel's heart raced, adrenaline igniting a primal instinct within her. She pushed herself to her feet, reluctant to approach but drawn by an invisible thread of fate. "Please, let it be you," she whispered, every syllable soaked in fear. Steps pulled her forward, hesitant, each footfall a question in the language of dread. The moan grew louder, ragged and strained, twisting her insides with its desperate plea. "Help, help me," the whispers returned, spiraling around her. "This way." This way. Follow. An unsettling compulsion washed over her, urging her deeper into the thicket. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head as if to clear the fog that clouded her mind. "Leave me alone." But the shadows thickened, forming shapes that shifted at the edges of her vision. They teased and cooed, echoing her insecurities. "You have to save him, or else you'll never know." Rachel hesitated, her breath hitching. What if she ignored them, only to lose Danny forever? In her heart, she knew she couldn't risk it. She pressed on, fingers brushing against the bark of trees, rough and ancient. When she broke into another clearing, a sickening chill gripped her. The moon hung low, casting a ghostly glow over the twisted remains of a campfire, surrounded by heavy silence. A deep scratch in the ground, lined with leaves and bits of fabric, sent panic coursing through her veins. "Where am I?" "Rachel," the voice called again, softer now, familiar yet wrong. She turned, seeking its source, her muscles screaming for urgency. And there, fragmented in moonlight, appeared another shadow, its form indistinct. "Danny?" she ventured, dread slithering through her. "Help me," it echoed again, an unsettling blend of suffocation and sorrow that clawed at her. The figure stumbled toward her, its movements jerky and disjointed. She squinted, nerves taut like tightrope wires. A flash of recognition ignited a spark, followed by brutal realization. It wasn't Danny. It was just a hollow imitation, a simulacrum designed to lure her in. "Get away from me!" she screamed, fear washing over her like a cold tide. She took a step back, but the shadows closed in tighter, constricting her escape, sucking the air from her lungs. "Leave us alone." Panic twisted every syllable into a desperate plea as she turned to dash back the way she came. But each turn of her head morphed the scenery, trees shifting positions, the path disappearing into an endless maze of darkness. Terror shot through her. The whispers crescendoed, "You can't escape the truth." Then suddenly, a thunderous cracking filled the air, followed by a heavy thud that shook the ground beneath her. With dread pooling in her stomach, Rachel turned to see a massive shadow materialize within the trees, a dark figure looming, much larger than the rest. Its glowing eyes pierced through the shadows with a hunger that made her blood run cold. Rachel, it beckoned, voice cavernous and haunting. The weight of fear settled on her chest like a boulder. What had she stumbled into? As the darkness swirled around her, drowning all hope, she realized one chilling fact. She wasn't just trying to save Danny, she was fighting to survive. And the figure in the shadows was no friend. With terror amplifying her senses, she felt the urgency clawing at her to move. "Run," she whispered to herself, bolstered by that flicker of instinct. But as she turned to escape, the darkness shifted, revealing multiple shadows forming a ring around her, ready to pounce. Could she find the strength to break through, or would this haunting forest claim her too? Rachel's breath quickened, her heart thumping in her ears like a relentless drum. The sounds of the forest morphed, an orchestra of chaos, each whisper a reminder of her imminent doom. The shadows moved, creeping closer, their forms sinister and grotesque, pushing against her resolve. She peered into the darkness, searching for any hint of an escape. The forest twisted, branches clawing at her like skeletal fingers eager to drag her back into the depths. "No." She choked, the word escaping her lips as a plea, not a command. She could feel the weight of despair tugging at her mind, a murky fog swallowing her thoughts. "Come to us," they murmured, seduction laced with venom. Rachel stumbled back, her feet slipping on the slick leaves. The moonlight flickered, failing to illuminate her path as the thick canopy absorbed any glimmer of hope. A figure broke through the darkness, jagged and broken, mimicking the movement of a marionette with strings severed. It was the night's trick, a reminder of the horror she had just encountered. "Not Danny," she muttered to herself, but fear rooted her, paralyzed by the impossibility of the situation. "Help me," it wailed again, the syllables twisted in agony, each utterance unraveling her sanity. With a visceral push, she forced her legs to move, to escape the madding chorus of despair that clawed at her resolve. Each step felt heavier than the last, the systematic thudding of her heart magnifying the peril surrounding her. Rachel, the shadows conspired, drowning her in colorless echoes that tainted her mind. "Do you really think you can escape? Is Danny even out there?" The question pierced her, sharp and chilling. Doubt gnawed at her gut. What if they were right? What if all she had been doing was running in circles? "Run. Keep running." A dim voice flared up within her, fighting against the tide of despair. She pushed forward, breaking into another clearing, the air thinner here, colder. Just then, she saw it. The old stone altar, remnants of long-forgotten rituals, draped in moss and darkness. Something inside her screamed to stay away, but the shadows were closing in. "Help! Help me!" Someone called from the depths of a darkened corner, a sound that tugged at her heart. "Danny?" she whispered, hope igniting involuntarily. But it was a trap, she knew. Still, driving panic forced her to inch closer to the altar. Her instincts screamed at her to turn away, but a sense of urgency wound her deeper into the pulsating web of fear. The shadows shifted again, forming a wall behind her, blocking any path she might have taken to retreat. She spun, panic twisting her insides like an iron vice. The figure, a grotesque version of Danny, ripped through the underbrush, its face twisted in agony, soaked in darkness. "Let me go!" she cried, stumbling backward towards the stone, the weight of the altar nagging at her subconscious. "Rachel, you have to save me," it wailed, the voice akin to a dead echo. She shuddered, feeling the uncanny corruption seep into her soul. Then the ground rumbled beneath her. The altar glimmered, a pulsating energy swirled around it, enveloping her in a chilling embrace. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the ancient stone as if it burned them. Suddenly, a burst of light erupted from the altar, illuminating the clearing with a fierce brilliance. The shadows hissed, retreating into the dark corners of the woods. Rachel's heart raced with confusion amidst the jarring shift. "Dare you awaken us?" A voice thundered, deep and resonant, echoing with centuries of power. The woods trembled in response, the trees shaking as if to expel an ancient force. "What do you want with me?" Rachel screamed, raw desperation pooling in her words. "You possess what we crave, the truth," it replied, the sound both alluring and terrifying. The shadows were coming back, but this time, they dazzled with fear of their own. A choice loomed in front of her, a gamble between the light and the void. Would she dare indulge the spirit's call or succumb to the shadows once more? In that moment, she understood one truth: she wasn't just battling for her life, she faced a reckoning that threatened to shatter everything she thought she knew. As the ground shifted beneath her feet, she took a step forward, drawn toward the light. What lay ahead could either unveil her salvation or plunge her deeper into despair. Rachel paused at the altar, the flickering light reflecting off the ancient stones. Shadows writhed around her, whispering promises wrapped in fear. "You can never escape," they taunted again, their cold fingers clawing at the edges of her mind. But she couldn't relent. This was her moment, the truth had to come to light. "Show me what you want," she cried, voice slicing through the drumming silence. The shadows recoiled, past her, and then the air shimmered. The dark presence in the forest hesitated, as if caught off guard by her defiance. In that heartbeat, a sliver of light erupted from the altar, illuminating the clearing. Faces flickered into view, children, lost and afraid. They reached toward her, pleading with wide, hollow eyes for someone to save them, someone to listen. "Danny, if you can hear me," she murmured, her heart pounding wildly. The spectral figures breathed life into her memories of laughter, innocent and bright. Hope ignited within her. This was not about surrendering to fear, it was a fight to reclaim everything she had lost. "Rachel." Danny's voice echoed again, clear and resonant amid the chaos. She spun, searching, desperation driving her to the brink. This was her duty, she had to embrace the truth, the winds of darkness turning within the shadows that gripped at her ankles. With newfound determination, she stepped toward the altar, calling for Danny. "Follow me. I will find you." The ground trembled again as the shadows writhed, anger radiating through the trees. She pushed through the energy swirling around her. She felt the weight of anguish in every breath, but this time it wasn't heavy, it was a burden she could bear. "Do you accept who you are?" The voice in the shadows surged, echoing through the clearing. "Will you confront your fears and find your child, knowing the cost?" The air thickened with tension, vibrating in her throat. She could feel their gaze, weighing the choices before her, real and heavy. "I will," she responded, at the edge of a leap into the unknown. "I will face my past. You don't control me." In that moment of defiance, the shadows recoiled, gasping at her fierce declaration, her heart pounding with empowering conviction. Drawing her strength from the light that blazed from the altar, she reached into the resonance of love she had held for Danny and every child lost within this haunted space. Suddenly, the air split open. Light flooded the clearing. It wrapped around her, warm and fierce, and for a heartbeat, time suspended, enveloping her in a cocoon of brilliance. The shadows screamed, lost and twisted by the brilliance that displayed the echoes of their weakness. "Danny!" she shouted, the clarion call echoing through the void. The brightness surged, splitting the darkness, revealing the outline of the boy, fragile and lost, resting like a glimmer amid the swirling chaos. "Mom!" he cried, arms reaching out toward her. In that moment, the shadows shrieked, thrashing in the bright light, and for the first time, their hold weakened. Taking a leap of faith, Rachel rushed toward her son, closing the distance in a heartbeat. She felt the warmth envelop them both as she wrapped her arms around him. "I've got you. We're getting out of here," she assured him, strength pulsing between them like an electric lifeline. Together, they turned toward the altar, the shadows sinking back into darkness, their cries morphing into fractured echoes. "You've chosen." The voice thundered one last time, but it was weak, faltering in the light that pulsated around Rachel and Danny, drawing on their shared energy. Mother and son plunged toward the light, surrendering to the warmth that beckoned. In an instant, the world shifted. The shadows shattered and then dissolved, the clearing transformed into ethereal mist. Rachel blinked, and suddenly, they were standing on a gently lit path, the weight of the darkness lifting from them entirely. They were free. Danny looked up at her, eyes wide with wonder, his spirit unbroken. "You found me, Mom." His voice rang out pure with innocence, wrapping around Rachel like a protective embrace. A joy stirred deep inside, filling the void created by despair. Rachel knelt before him, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I will always find you, no matter the distance or darkness." Her heart swelled with love, echoing through the silence that wrapped around them, and as they stood there, the realization set in that this tale wasn't just about a battle against shadows. It was about uncovering resilience, about never losing faith amid terror. In the distance, the forest faded away, replaced by the familiar warmth of sunrise creeping over the horizon. The air shimmered with the promise of new beginnings, filled with laughter, hope, and a brighter tomorrow, a world resplendent with light. Rachel and Danny clasped hands, united, stepping forward together into the dawn. Let us go home. Let this be the story that binds them, a reminder of light amid the darkest shadows. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next gripping chapter of heartbreaking mystery and thrilling adventure. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments with your reactions, theories, and thoughts on what you've just witnessed. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who desperately need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.